Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know how this works. We take a ton of sources and we find the coolest stuff to share with you.
Exactly.
Today we're diving into Trump's first month back in office.
Sounds good.
We're going to look at his campaign promises and what he's actually done so far.
It's always interesting to see how those two things line up.
It's been a crazy month. We've got speeches, we've got news articles, the whole shebang.
Sounds like we've got our work cut out for us.
For sure. Let's start with immigration.
Okay.
Trump made some pretty big promises about deportation during his campaign. Remember the largest deportation program in American history?
Oh, yeah, that was a big one.
So are we seeing mass deportations? I haven't really heard much about that in the news lately.
Well, the numbers are actually a little surprising.
Really? How so?
In his first month, Trump's administration deported about 37,660 people.
Okay.
That's actually lower than the monthly average under Biden.
Wait, lower than Biden? I thought Biden was supposed to be more lenient on immigration.
Well, Biden's numbers were higher because there were a lot more people crossing the border illegally back then.
So there were more people to deport.
Exactly. And this year we've seen a big drop in illegal border crossings, like a 66% drop in January 2025 compared to 2024.
Wow, that's a huge difference. So I guess just looking at deportation numbers doesn't tell the whole story.
It really doesn't. It's too early to tell if this is because Trump is changing his priorities or if other immigration policies are taking over for now. We'll have to keep watching to see how things develop.
For sure. Now, another thing that caught my eye was Trump's promise to deal with the January 6th riot early on.
Right.
And he definitely didn't waste any time there.
No, he didn't.
I mean, he pardoned over 1,500 people involved in the riot, like right after he took office. That was a bold move.
It was definitely controversial. A lot of people were outraged, including one of the police officers who was attacked that day. He called it a slap in the face.
I could see why people feel that way. What do you think the long-term implications of these pardons might be? Could they have consequences beyond this one event?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some legal experts are saying that this could set a dangerous precedent, that it might make people think they can get away with political violence because they might be pardoned later.
That's a scary thought.
It is. It makes you wonder what message this sends to the law enforcement officers who risked their lives that day.
Absolutely. This is something we'll need to keep an eye on as things develop.
Definitely.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the war in Ukraine. Remember, Trump said he could end the war within 24 hours.
Another classic campaign promise.
Yeah, but real life is always more complicated, isn't it?
Always.
So what's happening with that? Is he any closer to that 24-hour miracle?
Well, he did start talks with Russia pretty quickly.
That sounds promising.
But Ukraine is saying they won't accept any peace deal that's made without them being involved.
That's understandable. They're the ones in the middle of it all.
Exactly. President Zelensky is worried that any deal might benefit Russia too much and not address Ukraine's security needs.
Right.
And even European leaders are getting nervous about being left out of these talks. And there's concern that the sanctions against Russia might be lifted, which have been a key way to pressure Putin.
So it sounds like instead of a quick solution, things have gotten even more complicated.
That's one way to put it. It seems like Trump is willing to take a more direct approach, but whether that leads to anything good, we just don't know yet.
Okay, let's move on to another big one. Ending birthright citizenship. Trump said he'd do this on day one. Did he keep that promise?
He tried to. He issued an executive order that targets people who are in the U.S. illegally or on temporary visas.
So their kids born here wouldn't automatically be citizens.
That's the idea.
But I bet that's facing some pushback.
Oh, for sure. Opponents are arguing that this goes against the 14th Amendment, which says anyone born on U.S. soil is a citizen.
Oh, wow.
So there's a legal battle going on, and it looks like this is headed to the Supreme Court.
That's a huge deal.
It really is. Whatever they decide could change how we define American citizenship.
It's going to be a landmark case.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how the arguments play out and what effect the ruling has on immigration policy in the future.
Okay, before we wrap up this first part, let's talk tariffs. Trump promised a 25% tariff on everything from Mexico and Canada, right?
Yeah, he linked it to drug trafficking and migration.
I remember a lot of people freaking out about a potential trade war.
Oh yeah, it sent shockwaves through the markets.
So did he actually do it?
Well, he announced the tariffs on January 21st, and they were supposed to start February 1st.
Uh-oh.
But then
There's always a but with Trump, right?
he delayed the tariffs for a month.
Really?
It seems like Mexico and Canada promised to do more about border security, so he's giving them some time to make good on that.
So the trade war is on hold for now.
For now, but things are still pretty shaky.
It's been a wild ride so far, and we're just getting started. Stay tuned as we unpack more of what's happened in Trump's first month back in the Oval Office.
So we were just talking about those tariffs.
Right.
But those are just one part of the whole economy picture, you know?
Oh, totally. The economy was like the thing everyone was talking about during the campaign.
Yeah, for sure.
And Trump made a bunch of promises about it. Like, I specifically remember him saying he would bring prices down immediately, like starting on day one.
Ah, yes, those famous day one promises.
Right. But actually doing that, especially with something as complicated as the economy, is a whole different story.
Totally. It's not like you can just snap your fingers and everything changes overnight.
So what's the reality? Are prices actually going down?
Nope. Actually, they're going up.
Oh, no?
Inflation went way up in January. It's at a 16-month high now.
Ouch. So much for those instant day one miracles. But can a president even control prices like that? Doesn't the Federal Reserve have more power over that?
You've got a point there. Presidents don't have direct control over inflation.
Right.
It's a bunch of different things all mixed together: global supply chains, energy prices, how much people are buying, and yeah, the Federal Reserve's policies all play a part.
Okay, so maybe the president can't just make prices drop like that.
Right.
But I'm guessing his policies still affect things, right?
Absolutely. And some economists are saying that some of his policies might actually be making inflation worse, like those tariffs we talked about.
Mm.
And if the government spends more money, that can also push prices up.
It sounds like there's no easy answer.
Nope. It's a balancing act, for sure.
Yeah, some policies might make prices go up, others might bring them down. But in the meantime, people are feeling it in their wallets, at the grocery store, the gas pump, everywhere.
Exactly. It's a top concern for voters right now, and they're looking to Trump to make good on that promise to lower prices.
Makes sense. This whole promises versus reality thing is pretty interesting.
It is.
It really shows how much harder it is to actually run the country than it is to campaign for president.
For sure, campaign promises sound great, but then you have to deal with the real world. You have to make compromises. Unexpected things pop up, and sometimes your decisions have consequences you didn't even think about.
It's a tough job.
Definitely. And for us, for this deep dive, it's all about trying to figure out what's really going on.
Right.
It's not just about what happened, but why it happened and what it could mean down the road.
Exactly. We're connecting the dots, looking for patterns, and asking the hard questions.
Right. And hopefully we're giving our listeners the tools they need to form their own opinions about all of this.
That's the goal. All right, let's recap what we've covered so far. We've seen how Trump's handling immigration.
Right.
It's not exactly what some people expected based on what he said during the campaign.
Right.
We talked about those January 6 pardons and the possible legal fallout from that.
Uh-huh.
We looked at the situation with the Russia-Ukraine war and how that 24-hour solution hasn't really happened.
Yeah.
And we talked about the legal fight over birthright citizenship and what that could mean for American citizenship as a whole. And, of course, we can't forget those tariffs and the possibility of a trade war with Mexico and Canada.
Right.
Plus, we've looked at the economy under Trump and how inflation is making it hard for him to keep his promise about lower prices.
It's been a busy month for sure.
Yeah, tons of action, controversy, and uncertainty. But one thing's clear, Trump is running things the same way he campaigned: big statements, aggressive moves, and he's not afraid to push the limits.
That's for sure.
Which brings up a big question. What does this all mean for the rest of his presidency?
Good question.
Will he keep pushing those controversial policies? Or will he have to change his approach because of pushback from Congress, the courts, maybe even his own party?
That's the million-dollar question. It's hard to say for sure. We'll just have to see what happens.
True. But it's going to be a wild ride, that's for sure.
Definitely.
All right, everyone, we've covered a lot today, but this
Yeah.
is really just the beginning. We've only scratched the surface of what's going on.
There's always more to learn.
And we always want you to keep digging deeper, keep asking questions, and ultimately come to your own conclusions.
That's what it's all about.
Because the best insights are the ones you find for yourself.
Absolutely.
So we'll leave you with one last thing to think about. Given everything we've discussed today, what does this first month tell us about how Trump will handle the next 4 years?
It's something to keep in mind as we try to make sense of all this.
It is. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going. Okay, so we're back for the last part of our deep dive into Trump's first month back in the White House.
Back at it.
We've talked about all those campaign promises, we've looked at the policies he's put in place,
Yeah.
and we've even thought about what all this might mean down the road.
Uh-huh.
But there's one really important thing we haven't talked about yet.
What's that?
The human side of things.
Oh, right.
It's easy to get caught up in all the political stuff and forget that these decisions are affecting real people's lives.
Totally behind all those headlines and all the political back and forth, there are actual people and communities who are dealing with the consequences of these policies.
And that's something we always try to remember here on the deep dive.
For sure.
We want to hear those voices. We want to understand what it's like for people on the ground.
I think that's so important. We need to go beyond all the partisan arguments and really listen to the people who are being affected the most.
Exactly. What are their stories? What are they worried about?
Right.
Like we talked about immigration.
Yeah.
What's it like for those families who are constantly afraid of being deported?
It's got to be incredibly stressful.
And what about the people who are struggling to keep up with the rising prices because of inflation?
Right. They're the ones feeling the pinch every day.
Those are the stories that really show us how these policies are playing out in the real world.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about the communities that are dealing with the effects of tariffs and trade wars.
Right. Those impacts hit people where it hurts.
It's a good reminder that politics isn't just some game. It has real consequences for how people live their lives.
It really does. And it's up to us to pay attention to those stories,
Yeah,
to try to understand different points of view, and to speak up for policies that make things fairer for everyone.
couldn't agree more.
So as we finish up this deep dive into Trump's first month back in office, we want to encourage you to look beyond the headlines and the sound bites.
Yep.
Find those different perspectives, listen to people's stories, and have those tough conversations about these important issues.
Those conversations, those efforts to understand each other, that's where we can start to come together and build a better future for everyone.
Exactly. That's what the deep dive is all about. Giving you the knowledge and the tools to be informed and active participants in our democracy.
We believe that knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
And when we share that power, when we help each other to think critically and to engage with each other in a positive way, we can create a world that's more informed, more just, and ultimately just better.
So well said. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and keep the conversation going.